Hello, welcome to Philosophy Roulette 143, where we get philosophy off the internet and read and review it live for the viewing pleasure of everyone. So let's see what's new today. Agriculture and human values. How is it that you publish so much agriculture and human values? Roberto Loss University. I like you, Roberto Loss. This is one of my fastest ways of finding something. It's analysis, assuming it loads. Oh no. Go to robertoloss.com. Page not found. Okay, let's just see. Draft. Okay. Hooray! Okie dokie, so we got this paper in analysis, which I have not yet read, which is surprising because I've read almost all the ones I have access to in analysis and thought for the last few years. But yeah, so I like it because I don't have to worry about page length and reading for like 2 hours. I mean, I'm gonna put like a picture of Pascal behind me or something. It says, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter note. You, of course, can grab the link if you're in the chat live by typing !paper, or it'll be underneath the video in the show notes, this link to this page, and you can, well, I guess you'll just have to end up clicking on Scholar like I did, and then going to the gentleman, I suppose's website. But, yeah, if you want to get it's available for everyone to read. And there we go. So there's like 2 minutes in. It's amazing. Okay, there are no fundamental facts. I think that's going to come as a surprise to some people. Introduction. Many facts appear to depend on and thus to be grounded in other facts. So we're talking about, you see this is highlighted, grounded in, so maybe we're talking about inness of grounding somehow. The fact that it is true that the Earth's climate is warming is grounded in the fact that the Earth's climate is indeed warming. So we've got I'm blank now. Repetition theory of truth or something. It's just repeating itself. The fact that the singleton Socrates exists is grounded in the fact that Socrates exists. This is a disquotational or something? We'll see. The fact that the flag of the European Union is blue is grounded in the fact that it is reflex blue, etc. What is that? It's plenty of people on metaphysical grounding nowadays. Are there fundamental facts, namely facts that are not grounded in other facts? In this paper, I will present an argument showing that certain assumptions concerning the notion of metaphysical grounding entail that no fact is fundamental. In Section 2, I will briefly present the argument. In Section 3, I will attempt to defend its main assumption and compare it to a similar argument recently proposed by Mark Jago, who we have read more than one paper on, I think, in this series, or at least one. One. Mark Jago also broadcasts on YouTube. It's called Attic Philosophy. Y'all should go check out his channel on YouTube. I will put a link in the show notes for Mark Jago and Attic Philosophy. So he does some interesting stuff. In Section 4, I will consider two possible objections. I will then conclude that the argument presented in this paper seems to provide at least some minimal support to the idea, possibly excluding a restricted set of special facts, that there are indeed no fundamental facts. Well, that's interesting. If the ones are special are the fundamental ones. Wouldn't that just make them special and fundamental? I take it they won't be what people think they are. Okay, and in my recent railing against this sort of index, if your introduction is so short that the index itself is longer than the entire introduction, then it's okay because then it is just the introduction. You don't have an introduction, you just have an index, which it serves the same purpose. But otherwise, I mean, it's an analysis paper. How much organization do we need? This thing is going to bottom out at 7 pages, and that's including references. Okay, the argument. And that has nothing to do with this author. I just want to make that clear because I send these things to the authors. It's not against them. I endorse here an operational approach to metaphysical grounding, see Correa and Schneider, and take the notion of grounding to be expressed by means of the many one sentential operator like the less than symbol. I take a fancy G to be the operator. It is a grounded fact that, which I define as follows, where we've got variables and we got plural variables. Okay, so basically, grounded fact of some sense is, by definition, there is some sort of plural stuff that is grounded in grounded fact in that thing. So this is basically a redundancy theory of grounding. The grounded theory is redundantly grounded in that thing. So for it to be grounded, it is grounded in itself. So blue, the flag being blue, is grounded in the fact that the flag is blue, not grew. No, it really can't be grounded in grew. Okay, as it is common in the literature on grounding, I will allow for nested occurrencing of grounding operator and take thus formulas like grounded, grounded, A. So it's grounded that it's grounded in A. And you can throw negations in to be well formed. And you can do normal sort of logic-y stuff with these formulas. Okay, the argument for the non-existence of fundamental facts is similar to the so-called Church-Fix paradox and relies on the following three premises. If it is grounded that a fact that A, then if it's grounded that A, then it implies that A. Okay. If A and B is the case, it is logically possible that both the fact that A and the fact that B are grounded facts. So if A and B, it's possible that A is grounded and B is grounded. And whatever is provably false is provably impossible. So if you can prove not A, then it's not possible that A. I follow Jago in taking the sense of logical possibility in question to be weak, ideal conceivability, conceptual coherence, or logical consistency, rather than substantial metaphysical property. I also take logically possible situations to respect the principle FG. The argument against the existence of fundamental facts is the following. Okay, a bunch of logic is, let's see, this argument proves by generalization that for every A, it is a fact that A, then it is a grounded fact that A, and thus no fact is fundamental that is ungrounded. So they prove that from any fact, you can say from any ungrounded version of it, you can say then it is therefore grounded in itself. Therefore, there is nothing that is ungrounded because it at least would have to be grounded in itself. Discussion. The main argument presented in section 2 is very similar to an argument for truth maker maximalism. They claim that every truth has a truth maker, recently proposed by Mark Jago. Did I actually read that one? I think that's the one I read. An analysis of Mark Jago. Well, it's likely that was it. Jago's argument relies on N and the following three premises where TMA stands for A has a truth maker. For each truth A truth maker of A is logically possible if A implies possibly truth maker of A. If A is a truth maker, then A is true. Truth maker implies A. If A and B have a truth maker, then so do A and B. And truth maker of A and B implies distribution of truth maker A and truth maker B. Okie dokie. Alright, so FG is just the grounding counterpart of F and follows from the harmless assumption that the relevant notion of grounding is factive. The grounding counterpart of D is DG. If it is a grounded fact that A and B, both the fact that A and the fact that B are grounded facts. Okay, so we've swapped out truth-making for groundedness because it's apparently a harmless, well, at least Fine says it's a harmless assumption that the notion of grounding is factive. I have beef with facticity, but it depends what you mean, factivity or facticity. But I tend to have beefs with this, but when my beef is global, not with what anybody is saying right here. I'll tell you, the truth is, the day I decided to reject facticity of the world, I was much happier. However, back to the paper. However, employing DG instead of PG to prove that there are no fundamental facts would be question-begging in this case. In fact, the literature on grounding, the principle according to which every conjunctive fact is grounded fact, is usually taken to be central to the impure logic of ground. This principle is not valid under a worldly conception of grounding, according to which the fact that A and A is equivalent to the fact that A, which entails the fact that A and A is ungrounded whenever the fact that A is. Even in this case, however, we have that at least conjunctions different That is, non-equivalent facts are always grounded facts. Therefore, provided that there are at least two different facts, DG alone can be used to prove that no fact is fundamental. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. Why would that be the case, though? I don't know. It's interesting, though. Suppose that the fact that A is fundamental fact and the fact that B is a further fact. The fact that A and B is thus a grounded fact. It follows from DG that both the fact that A and the fact that B are grounded, and thus the fact that A is not a fundamental fact. Contradiction. Therefore, the fact that A is not fundamental, and by generalization, no fact is. It follows from DG that both the fact that A and the fact that B are grounded, thus the fact that A is not a fundamental fact. So the fact that you can make a conjunction here would mean that the sub-fact within the conjunction is not fundamental, because it's part of a further fundamental thing. Okay. Jago claims that P can be defeasibly justified as follows. Where's P? I don't know where P is. Well, we'll find out. First, he argues quite plausibly that at least some of the truthmaker maximalist approaches on the market are logically consistent. Then he proceeds inductively and claims that the fact that it is clearly logically possible for some representative truth to have truthmaker, Obama is male, wombats are marsupials, 1 + 1 is 2, there is no greatest prime number, scarlet things are red, Jago, gives us warrant, not proof, but reason nonetheless to accept P. Also, in the case of PG, it appears possible. PG is this thing that says if there is a fact, then it's possible. It's this thing here. Where is it? Oh, here. This is it. Yeah. So if you have a truth, then it's possible that there's a truth maker for it. Okay. So, sorry, I had to go remind myself what P was. Okay. Also, if in the case of PG it appears possible to provide at least some defeasible reason for its truth, consider first the non-conjunctive counterpart of PG. If A, then it's logically possible that it is a grounded fact that A. That is, A implies possibly grounded that A. So from there being a fact, then it is possibly grounded that there's a fact. PG star clearly holds for derivative facts. For what concerns fundamental facts, it seems fair to say that no fact can be clearly and uncontroversially claimed to be metaphysically fundamental. At the same time, the facts that most controversially may turn out to be metaphysically fundamental seem to be those described by fundamental physics, like, say, the fact that a certain electron has a certain spin, the fact that a certain photon occupies a certain point in time and space, etc. Are those actually fundamental physical facts? So, I mean, that'd be, I'm not sure those actually count, but the point still stands. Because, I mean, maybe a law is more of a fundamental physical fact than an arbitrary state of the universe. Well, I guess it depends it depends. But it's not a big deal. The sense of possibility relevant to PG and PG star is a logical possibility. That's why it doesn't matter, because it's a logical possibility, not physical. Therefore, in order for these kinds of facts to be ungrounded in this sense, there would have to be some kind of logical connection between the notions involved in the relevant facts. For example, electron, photon, spin, and space-time point, and the notion of grounding. But this doesn't sound plausible at all. It appears thus safe to conclude that the most uncontroversial candidates for actual fundamental facts seem to comply with PG star, which gives us at least prima facie defeasible reason to think that PG star is indeed true. Yeah, you're not going to get a empirical rejection of PG star, I don't think. Similar considerations can also be used to Bollinger PG. PG clearly obtains when the fact that A and the fact that B are both derivative facts. If instead the fact that A and the fact that B are both facts of fundamental physics, then PG star seems at least to suggest that PG is also true. If every fact of fundamental physics could have been a derivative fact, why couldn't any two such facts have been derivative together? Similarly, if the fact that A is a fact concerning fundamental physics and the fact that B is grounded only in facts of fundamental physics, it is difficult to imagine why the latter couldn't obtain as a derivative fact if also the former was derivative. Therefore, this line of reasoning seems to also lend at least some kind of minimal support for PG. Okay, objections and replies. So what's going on here? Let me just recap quick, because this is going fast. It's a sort of logically informed Hi, Pedro. You know, I did look this up. You gotta try a little harder there because it doesn't show up on the activity feed. So, I love you too, but the donation is just sort of like I don't believe it because I'm not even an affiliate yet, my friend. So, you're not donating nothing because I can't get donation. So please go donate someplace else. So, yeah. So what was happening over here? Okay, so the fact is that once you can sort of like put things together, then it makes it look like if there's some sort of conjunctive fact, then the fact that you can always break that down means there's no fundamental one. Then what they're saying is why would any one fact be fundamental? You might be able to make find a fundamental fact in physics, but what would be the status that guaranteed it unless it was derivative of something else? So it'd be a very hard thing to find, and so it gives some minimal truth to the fact that all facts could be looked at as somewhat conjunctive or derivative facts from something else. Okie doke. So where were we? Yeah. So it's interesting that what's happening here is they're using just the notion of conjunction, just putting two things together, as long as they're not the same thing, because then it sort of collapses. Then you can say, well, look, just because you can put two things together, then you also are, was I? Oh no, losing where I was. Oh no, I don't read anything from disk update. Okay, I'm over here. Yeah, the fact that you can put two things together in what looks like a simple logical thing form means that you can't if things can be put together logically, then it looks like even that makes it a worry in terms of grounding that neither of them is fundamental. Okay, because they could have been two such facts could have been derivative together. All right. Okay, objections and replies. As we saw in the previous section, PG can be defended by appealing to the prima facie plausibility of PG star. If PG star entails that no fact is necessarily fundamental. Consider, however, essentialist facts. That is, facts from the form it is essential to X that phi, where it is essential to X that. This finds essentialist operator. Some may object that, although the kind that these kinds of facts may be fundamental is clearly not as uncontroversial as in the case of fundamental physics. Many will still agree that if essentialist facts are fundamental, they are necessarily so. In a similar vein, one may claim, inspired by Fein's impure logic of ground, that if they are fundamental, also totality facts, saying of some entities that they are entities that exist, must be fundamental whenever they obtain. However, even if we accept the existence of either essentialist facts or totality facts, and they're being ungrounded in this weak sense of possibility, we can simply restrict PG to conjunctions of facts that are neither equivalent to essentialist facts nor to totality facts. In this case, if the fact that A is neither an essentialist fact nor a totality fact, then most plausibly the same can be said of the fact that not grounded A, so that the argument just given can be used to argue that there are at least no fundamental facts that are neither essentialist facts nor totality facts, a result that is surely surprising enough on its own. Okay, so this was a bit of a mouthful, but basically saying, look, you can always define yourself into a position where you get what you want, but like, so if you define yourself, well, this is an essential fact, and you just define it as that way. So it's something is essential to X. But then, of course, this person is saying, well, look, we're just going to sidestep that. We're going to define ourselves out of anything defined in such a way, and then so anything else in the world, except for these sort of ramified, you're just ramming at home version of it, metaphysics, then everything else doesn't count, and that still would make the argument go through. And so you could just say not grounded that one. And so you could basically ad hoc. Well, it's a little ad hoc. You could ad hoc count out the ones that are just defined as such. And I guess that works on this theory. Okay, so Gupta 2015 distinguishes between facts that are apt to be grounded but have no ground and autonomous facts, that is, facts that are not apt to be grounded. It is not that the question of what grounds them is well taken and the answer is nothing. It is rather that the question of what grounds them does not legitimately arise in the first place. One may suggest that if grounded facts of the form not GA are taken to be autonomous in this sense, then the argument in section 2 cannot even get off the ground. As in this case, formulas of the form grounded that not grounded A seem to be best seen either as ill-formed or lacking a truth value. However, in order to ward off this objection, it appears sufficient to replace PG with the following simple, plausible principle: PG plus. Okay, so what they did was they put, if it's even possible that A is grounded, and A and B are facts, then it's possible that A is grounded. And it's possible that the whole conjunctive formula of grounded A and B are there. Okay, so PG plus says that if it is the case that A and B and the fact that A is groundable, then it is possible for B to be the case and for the fact that A to be a grounded fact. The same train of thought used above to defend PG can also be used to defend PG plus. Equipped with PG plus, we can then argue as follows. Yeah, and you get the same results as above. This argument proves by generalization that every groundable fact is grounded. Therefore, assuming that by suitable restriction version of PG star by excluding special ungroundable facts, it still follows that none of the normal groundable facts is fundamental. Finally, one may object that the present argument shows is simply that truths of the form A and not GA are counterexamples to both PG and PG+. However, as Jago 2019 notices concerning his argument, this move appears to be dialectically ineffective in this case, as it consists in simply assuming the falsity of what is at stake, namely the existence of fundamental facts. Since if A and not GA is true, then the fact that A is a fundamental fact. Okay. Similarly, so this is begging the question, they're saying, because if you have something and it's ungrounded, then you've already got what this is arguing against. Okay. Similarly, the present argument cannot be said to prove too much, as PG, PG star, and PG plus appear to have far less appeal when applied to other notions, like knowledge or belief. Consider, for instance, the following counterpart to PG plus, in which the operator G is replaced with the operator K, standing for Frege knew that. So, Frege knew that it's possible to ground plus. Okay. It's possible that Frege knew that A and B, therefore implies it's possible that Frege knew that A and B. In this case, it is uncontroversial that there are some truths that Frege didn't know, like, for instance, that Neptune has 14 moons. Therefore, in order to show the falsity of KPG+, it is sufficient to replace B with not KA and A with any truth that clearly Frege didn't know. Instead, in the case of PG+, there seems to be no truths that can be clearly and uncontroversially said to be metaphysically fundamental. Let's see, what is that exactly saying there? Yeah, so if you stick in something is possibly new and then something he possibly doesn't know, then the whole thing just sort of starts collapsing. Okay. Yeah, so you can break that up. Alright, conclusion. Jago 2019 proposed an argument to the effect that every truth has a truth maker. In this paper, I've argued that either PG or PG plus are accepted. A similar argument can be used to prove that, excluding perhaps some restricted family of special ungroundable facts, which are defined as such. So it's not like these are natural things. There are no fundamental facts. This result strikes one as even more surprising than Jago's. In fact, assuming, as is quite standard, even if not completely uncontroversial, that grounding is irreflexive, asymmetric, and transitive, so that there are no grounding loops, this entails that every fact, or every normal fact in the sense specified above, is an abyss, that is, a derivative fact having no fundamental ground and lying on top of an infinitely defending chain of ground, which surely strikes one as rather controversial. Some may take this to be bad company objection to some may take this to be a bad company objection to Jago's argument. However, what Jago says in defense of his argument has at least the ring of plausibility to it. I think, therefore, the argument presented in this paper can be seen as simply establishing that there is a short and direct way to provide at least some minimal support to the idea that there are no fundamental facts, a support that can be resisted in a dialectically effective way only by presenting some non-question begging counterexample to the principle PG and PG+. If I am right, it is possible to conclude that we have at least some prima facie defeasible reason to think that reality is an abyss. Well, that's a nice closing sentence. The question is, how much do we buy the argument? Now, in terms of the argument, this is a person after my own heart. After looking at Mark Jago stuff before, I like Mark Jago stuff, so it's I'm a little biased towards argument like this. Use a little bit of logic, you get a nice proof, and then you get to make a nice conclusion out of it. I mean, what else is there in philosophy? And it's short. It's like, yay. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so where I would come at this argument, because it is so tightly argued, it's such a short paper, you've got proofs in it, you've got stuff, is the sense of what is a normal fact anyway. Like I said, I started freaking out over here because I don't know if particulars actually count as... There might be different senses of what counts as a fundamental fact. Like, there might be fundamental instances of things, but there's also fundamental laws, and... if you were to switch this over from fundamental facts of physics to Morean facts are like, this is a hand. You see my hand? There's a hand. It's, in some sense, that's not a fundamental fact of physics. So what counts as fundamental there makes a big difference, and the target of your argument here, what grounds a Morean fact, is different from what grounds a physics fact. So that's one thing to be said off the get-go. And, I mean, I've worked on a little epistemology in this area. I don't actually think the Morean fact would work as cleanly for these sorts of facts. Maybe they do, I don't know. But that's just my first, gut check reaction. Okay, secondly, let's see. What are we doing with the logic? The logic is basically, it says, look, you can just argue yourself into showing that if you're going to have this grounding relation is going to allow for generalization to everything. So, from something being grounded, you can get to, by generalization, you can get yourself, that any grounded fact is not fundamental, so it's ungrounded. You get an ungrounded version of it. Alright, let's see what else is going on here. Oh yeah, this is the other thing. What is the status of logic in this world here? Now, trying to figure out the status of the conjunction makes a big difference here, especially because these sorts of arguments are turning on the meaning of understanding conjunction as some sort of fundamental thing to begin with. Now, this gets us into another problem called the adoption problem. How do we understand conjunction and also generalization? Because any time you try to analyze these things, you end up using them in their own description. So you're inherently going to be in a problem of circularity. So perhaps there's a relation here to one of these logical circularities that you can't escape, and that might also be going on because that might be sort of like an underlying related feature of the fact that you need to use a conjunction, and that the real thing is not the grounding, but the conjunction is really the issue here. So I'd actually be a little worried about the understanding of logic in this world, because again, if we're talking about facts, but then we've got logic and that's set apart as separate, what is that separateness that is ungrounded? Okay, so maybe those are special facts, the sort of the essentialist things, but again, that would have to be spelled out too. So, alright, so we've got a few different questions, kind of facts, and then the tools used here matter, because are those tools the facts and the sort of the operators and the logical constructions? What sort of facts are they, and what do they do? So, all sorts of sort of reflexive issues in arguments like this. Other than that, I sort of, the strategy here was to take Jago's argument and then sort of like convert it to grounding and then like weaken it in just like soft ways to make it work. and I think it was mostly successful. As the author said, like, you're just gonna get a defense, or like at least a minimal sort of amount of understanding, a minimal amount of support for the fact that they for their conclusion, which is all they needed. I mean, that's always a good thing in your writing. If you're writing philosophy, do not make a super strong argument. Just don't do it, because you will get yourself into a lot of trouble. I've got myself into trouble. If you use too strong an argument to prove a small point, people get confused. So you at least want to just get the right amount of support. You don't want to overshoot your target. You want to hit your target. So always degrade the strength of your argument to at least hit your target, not go past it. You don't want to blow your target up. I mean, yes, you can blow your targets up sometimes, but then you have to be prepared for the fallout, and there will be fallout. Okay, so if you're right, it is possible to conclude that we have some prima facie defeasible reason to think that reality is an abyss. Well, it depends what you're so worried about reality about. Okay, have a good day, everybody. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be back tonight. Oh yeah, one other thing. Author. Yeah, before I forget, Mark Jago 2020. There's also reference to Mark Jago 2019. So which one is it? I didn't think you were referencing two papers, and there's definitely a Mark Jago 2020 and a Jago 2019 somewhere. So which one is it? I see right here. I noticed this. I was like, I didn't think this was a thing. So author, if you get to the end, please do. You are only referencing Jago once, not twice. So hopefully before it gets to press. Okie dokie. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions, or else I'll be back tonight? Oh yeah. And also, if you're still watching, please send me stuff to read, because I have to get lucky to find cute little papers like this nowadays. I used to find them more, and now it's just hard to do. But that's it for now. Have a good day. Stay safe out there, people. Happy Memorial Day weekend if you're in the U.S.